some ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, not much going on in the world today, would you say, Josh?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, nice quiet.
That might be an understatement.
Well, today it's just going to be me ranting about what's going on in the world because everybody needs my opinion. That's what it says so in the title here. But I'm going to drink my coffee and just talk about, this blockade. And at the end, I want to address something that really does upset me quite a bit. All right. The latest True Social posting. I'm going to address that when I can, if I can, without being just off the top angry. But I'm going to do the best I can because I am an objective analyst, right?
That's the truth.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, did you get any rain this weekend?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, we did too,
a little bit in Fort Worth. It was a nice amount, not too much.
Yeah, what gets to me is, of course, the Armageddon, all this stuff they prognosticate, oh my gosh, hope you have a lifeboat, get the life jackets out, and then you get about a quarter inch. But it beats nothing. My garden needs it. So anyway, we're going to talk about this blockade and what it really means. I think the blockade is not the word that really should be used as such because it has a lot. When they use that word, they're thinking something else than what actually really is happening. I mean, it's similar, but it's not quite that way. Irma here says, "I can do it." All right, I'm going to do the best I can, Irma, and you be sure to throw in some commentary. I'm sure you will. But anyway, let's go with the sponsors. And again, I use the usual caveat that these are my views, not necessarily their views. And I appreciate the opportunity for them to put my views out there. But if you want to know what they think, ask them. But as far as what I'm going to talk about today, I think they'll be on board. Also, so let's start with Otto at our place. Always a great place. I go there often. Have B&I meeting, so our one-to-ones there, as we call them, because it's a great place to get a cup of coffee and maybe have a biscuit or something like that. Or if you're early enough, we'll do breakfast or do lunch. It's always good, and it's a great place to do business. Same thing with Gina's Pizza. I really do like their pizza. Particularly, it's great during the summertime when they have baseball on. Or, this past 3 or 4 days, you could have been watching the Masters and had a pizza and a beer, and it's just a good day. And so Gina's Pizza is it's just a good place to do business. Tonight, I believe it's chess night, and then tomorrow night, I believe it's bingo night, and then Wednesday they have karaoke. So they got all of this stuff going on. Of course, Sunday night they got the live music, which is become kind of a thing now in Burleson. So there you are. Also, my friend John Williams over at Old Pro Roofing, 817-734-2756. It's funny because he and a couple others in our B&I group they root for the weather. Come on, weather, because but anyways, if you found out that you actually had a leak Sunday night or Sunday morning, whenever it was raining, you need to call somebody like John and call John specifically at Old Pro. They're local people. Their office is only a block from City Hall, so you're dealing with home folks. John will come out to your house and tell you the truth about your roof. So 817-734-2756. Also, my friend Jeff Kelly, 817-781-0546, or Jeff at jeffkellyrealty.com. If you're looking to buy or sell, this is the man to talk to because he knows where the real estate is. And there's still a lot of real estate being moved. You hear about the economy and, don't let the national news influence what's going on here because he'll tell you that the houses are still moving. People move here because they like this town, they like this area, they like the proximity to DFW. And we have in Burleson a lot to offer a family, definitely. Besides just the schools, we also have good police. We also have parks. We have things going on. We'll be talking about those things towards the end. Also, my friend Rod Lewis over at the Burleson News Express. If you want to find out what's going on at the city council meetings, he goes to every one of them. And while you're drinking your coffee at Daydream, or while you're getting your hair done, or while you're getting your car repaired, or while you're just perusing in the stores, you can pick up a copy of the Burleson News Express and see what's going on in our little town. And it's I like it because when I go to a place like Daydream, has some coffee, I could scroll on the phone and it's all wonderful, great, and yada yada yada. But I like holding something in my hand while I read it. It's just the old school in me here. I'm an old fashioned kind of guy. Also, True Climate Heating and Cooling. I mentioned about 10 days ago they came out and took care of our inspection, and we passed inspection, so to speak, and we're glad of it because now we don't have to worry about the air conditioner break it down in July? Well, and if it does, I'm going to have a steep discount on the repair. They have a $99 deal where basically you pay, and therefore they'll come and check your air conditioner on a routine basis, and at a much reduced cost, and also the repairs if it needs one. And they're not going to give you some song and dance about it. They'll tell you what you need, and you'll get that at a greatly reduced cost. So it's kind of like almost like air conditioner insurance, I guess, if you want to call it such. Okay, I'm working through all the various groups here, and so we all get posted, and it's just wonderful. One more. There we go, and one more to go. All right, one more here. Okay, boom. Now they're all done. All right. I sent Josh 2 clips. One of them is already outdated. It was Saturday night's news, and it's already outdated. So I'm not going to show it. I mean, because I don't want to have to go get into it that much. But, the thing about it was Vance was sent to Pakistan to negotiate with the Iranians. And I'm going to show you what the Iranians showed up with in one of the slides right now, or a few minutes rather, I'm sorry. And they came with a incredibly unrealistic list of demands. And it's interesting they sent Vance to negotiate because of all the people in the administration, Vance was the least enthusiastic about this war. Here's one thing that's kind of interesting. About 3 or 4 days ago, there's an extended article in the New York Times that I invite y'all to read if you have access to that. And it talked about the decision-making process from behind-the-scenes sources and things of that nature, and what was going on in the discussions and whatnot. And the gist was that when they had 2 basic meetings over whether or not we need to invade or begin bombing Iran. And a lot of that was due to the push of Netanyahu and the Israelites, so I'm talking Old Testament, Israelis.
What year is it?
I know. Well, I teach Sunday school, and I was talking about Samuel the other day, and so they're Israelites, okay, so Israelis. And a lot of people are criticizing Israel, saying they pushed us into this war. Well, I don't know if that's really the case if you want to be pushed. If you're already on board with what they're pushing you on, are you really being pushed? But anyway, Netanyahu and his crew come in with all this intelligence about what's going on in Iran and how they're getting close to a bomb again and all this other business. And they had a meeting. Advance was not part of this. And they began the preliminary plannings of the bombing runs. And then they come back a few days later. They had another meeting. Vance was part of it. And he's the only one in the room that expressed serious misgivings about this whole enterprise. All right? Everybody else was either, well, boss, you make up your own mind. Hegseth was all for it. Rubio was like, well, I see the advantages. You make your decision, Mr. President. The chief of staff, General Kane, was like, well, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you what you do. Here's what's going to happen, probably. And so they gave him all this analytical stuff. And according to the people in the room, the general was not in favor of it, but he wasn't going to say that because he felt like his job was to advise the president, not to dictate policy. And basically, around the room, the consensus was this is a mighty, mighty big risk. And Trump says, well, we're going to do it because I think this will be done in 10 days. Well, it's been past 10 days. And once the Israelis notified us that Khamenei and the rest of his leadership crew were having an above-ground meeting, which shows how careless they were, I suppose, that's when it all kind of happened within about a 24-hour period in late February. I just find the whole thing interesting that Trump said this whole thing is going to last 10 days. That's craziness. That's a complete misreading of the history of this area. And I don't know how many wars that others have started or we have been involved in where the war started with this idea it's going to be over in 10 days. World War I, they'll be home by the end of August of 1914. Oh, goodness. That kind of stuff. Or that Vietnam, will be done by the end of the 1967. Or on and on and on. We continually... And not just the United States, but wars themselves continually overestimate their ability to make it quick and painless. And there's no such thing, not with this bunch. So Trump lies. What else is new? Well, okay, you'll be hearing plenty of that going on. Go ahead and show the clip because this is what we're living through here. When we get involved in these kind of things.
Tonight, on the eve of an historic negotiation, a revealing new look at how the war is hitting Americans' wallets. Gas prices in March skyrocketing 21%, the largest one-month spike on record. And that fueled a surge in the inflation rate to 3.3%, the biggest jump in nearly 4 years. All as oil prices remain high, with traffic through the Strait of Hormuz at a standstill. Just 2 ships passed through the strait today. The president calling the regime's control of the strait, quote, short-term extortion.
We're going to open up the Gulf with or without them, but that'll be open. We're going to be, or the strait as they call it, and I think it's going to go pretty quickly. And if it doesn't, we'll be able to finish it off.
It all comes as the fragile ceasefire in the Middle East appears to be largely holding, with no U.S. or Iranian strikes reported today. But one potential stumbling block is Lebanon, where Israeli strikes against Iran-backed Hezbollah continue, with more than 1,900 people killed since early March. Iran's parliamentary speaker, expected to be a key negotiator in peace talks set to begin tomorrow in Pakistan, writing that a ceasefire in Lebanon had been, quote, mutually agreed upon and must be implemented before the talks can begin. The White House denies that Lebanon is included in the current ceasefire. But President Trump told NBC News Thursday that he had spoken to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and expected the Israelis to, quote, low-key it in Lebanon. Vice President Vance departing for Pakistan this morning.
If the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive.
Garrett's joining us now from the White House. Garrett, these talks could be historic even before they begin.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. If Vice President Vance even so much as shakes hands with a member of the Iranian delegation, it would amount to the highest level direct engagement between the United States and Iran since 1979 and the Islamic Revolution that brought the Iranian regime to power in the first place.
We thank you for watching, and remember,
I don't know if he did shake hands or not, but it was funny. You and I both reacted to the same moment that Trump wanted the Israelis to low-key it.
Quote, unquote,
Yes,
low-key it.
low-key it. Yeah. Do me a favor. Bomb them less. Well, nothing like a little low-key bombing. But no, they're all right. They all right, though. Israel's relationship with Lebanon and Hezbollah was not included in the original peace thing. Here's the thing about it, all right? First of all, that True Social post he put on Easter morning, dropping a few F-bombs, praise be to Allah or whatever on Easter, I thought, highly in poor taste, to say the least. All right, on Easter Sunday in particular. Instead of, making some sort of let's pray for peace kind of thing, we're going to open the effing strait and all this other stuff, right? And then it comes Tuesday, we go through this drama, we're going to bomb them and end their civilization. Again, not what we want from the President of the United States. I had a couple of people push back on me a little bit before they understood what I was going to talk about. Yesterday when I put it out there, this is what I'm going to talk about. A couple of people said, well, are you going to mention this? Well, yeah, I'm going to mention it, okay? My point is this. The Iranian people are not our enemies, and they never have been, okay? The Iranian government and these fanatical leaders, the mullahs and the Revolutionary Guard and the Basij, as they're called, they're moral police. Those are the ones that we need to worry about. But the vast majority of Iranians are just suffering between us and them, so to speak, and always have. Those sanctions that everybody says are supposed to work, they don't, because the Iranian government does not care about its people. They just care about their holy mission. And so if the Iranian people suffer, well, they're doing it on behalf of Allah and the great, against the great Satan, et cetera, et cetera. We seem to think here in America that all governments respond to movements and moods of the people. That's not true in a lot of areas of the world, okay? The Iranian government will continue to oppress its own people. They've already killed 30,000 in this whole episode, but not only that, they've been doing that for years, since the beginning of this, quote, Islamic Republic in 1979. And so the idea that sanctions, just put more sanctions on will work, it won't. Why? Because they haven't. And because sanctions are designed to so make it so punitive that the people themselves will make changes. Well, the people in Iran don't have that ability to make changes in their government because they'll get killed, or jailed, one of the two. or both. So the Iranian people don't have the wherewithal to overthrow their own government. Why? Because they don't have the weaponry to do it. And the Iranian government has no compunction about mowing them down. So if you had 100,000 Iranians protesting in Tehran, a third of them would be killed. And the Iranian government will not blink an eye. That's what we're dealing with, okay? Second of all, the Iranian government isn't paying the price for these sanctions. Which now we're finding out that, and always knew actually, but now it's become more publicized, that the children and the families of these leaders of the Islamic Revolution don't live in Tehran. They live in London, Geneva, Paris, Brentwood in California, New York City, Rome, you name it. Their properties all over. One of the wealthiest Iranians in the world is their now new Ayatollah, Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the now late Ali Khamenei. He's worth billions. And the Iranian social media, such as it is filled with pictures of their kids driving around in cars drinking champagne, literally. And so the sanctions, we think, are going to apply enough pain and pressure on the Iranians that they will revolt against their own government. And it just hasn't happened. Okay? Now, before we start saying, well, then are you supporting the bombing? Let me get through my discussion, and you'll then come to that conclusion, because it's not quite that black and white where, well, this didn't work, therefore we need to bomb them. It isn't quite that clear cut. But the point is that people said we should have kept on doing what we needed to be doing. With the Strait of Hormuz was not a problem until Trump made it one. No, it was a problem. It always has been. What you see now has been threatened by the Iranians for 40 years. Every time that we got close to really imposing some serious pain upon Iran, they threatened to close the strait. And our Arab neighbors and allies would say to our president, whoever it was at that time, from Bill Clinton to date, please don't do this because it's going to hurt us as well. Okay? We've been dealing with the Strait of Hormuz in this capacity since really... The first time I remember it being a serious thing was in the George H.W. Bush administration. There was this incident with Iran, and they threatened to close the strait down. It was quickly passed over, no big deal. But they've been threatening to do this since Bill Clinton, since Obama, since Biden and Trump. And so I read these things and said, all Trump is getting is what we already had in the first place. Well, not really. Not really. Now, again, anybody that's listened to the show even a little bit knows I'm no fan of Trump. But the point is that he's not the first one to have to deal with this. He's just the first one that's dealt with it in this way. Okay? Now, it's back to that peace negotiation, which was a farce from the beginning. Go back to Tuesday. We're threatening to destroy their civilization. We get within the hour, and then the Iranians said, let's talk, and Trump declares victory. Well, nothing was accomplished that day. Josh, did you feel like any part of that day that we actually were going to end their civilization?
I don't even know anymore, man.
I knew we weren't. I just knew what this was. This was television. Mm-hmm. All right. This was, drama. This is what Trump lives on, And I had 2-3 people text me. I talked with a couple of people and said, do you really think this is going to happen? I said, no, you watch what happens. About an hour before the deadline, which was going to be 7 o'clock our time, the Iranians will say, let's talk, and Trump will declare victory. And that's exactly what happened. And I don't feel like I'm real smart in thinking that. We weren't going to bomb them like we were threatened to. It was just drama. But in a side note, we're supposed to have a 2-week ceasefire as of Tuesday night. I don't know this for a fact, but I have had a couple of people that have more connections with the military than I do say that this was all planned really to give our military 2 weeks to refit and repair and recoup kind of thing and move assets into the region. I have no reason to think otherwise. But this was all just theater, and that's why I didn't go through the day fretting about are we going to bomb Iran or not. So anyway, we go to the peace conference this weekend in Islamabad. Iran shows up with 71 negotiators. I don't know what that's going to do them. I think it's a little bit ironic Vance was the guy because he, like I mentioned earlier, he was the least enthusiastic and really the only one that told Trump that's a bad idea. Now, of course, being vice president, he has to go out and sell it. I guess he could have resigned, but that wouldn't have done anything. But anyway, it falls apart. If you would show the list of demands they made, okay? There you go. On the screen, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you can see the demands for yourself. And I italicized the ones I thought were pretty unrealistic, to say the least, okay? Particularly, like number 2, Iran's continued control of the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that's not going to happen. And we can't have that happen. When they talk about 20% of the world's oil goes through there, we don't get a lot of oil from that region anymore because of fracking and all that. And whatnot. We have much more internal sources than we used to. But the idea of them controlling the Hormuz, that was a non-starter. I mean, the president was going to agree to that. Also, Iran's uranium enrichment right should be accepted. That's not going to happen. No president has accepted that. Now, how they dealt with it was a lot different. You know, I'll talk about Obama's method, which I thought was an abject failure. But he wasn't wanting them to have a continued enrichment, even if he went about it in a different way than Trump is. Same with Clinton, same with W. On and on and on. Lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions, that's not going to happen. These sanctions have been on there for a long, long time, and that's not going to happen. Continue on. Payment of compensation for damages inflicted on Iran. Good luck getting that. So they came into this, my point is they came in, and one more here, withdrawal of all U.S. forces from the region. They came in here with these demands that they knew were unacceptable. Okay? I saw this list on Thursday, and I just said, why are they even wasting the time in Pakistan? This isn't going to happen. There's no chance in the world that any of these would be acceptable to any president, Trump and or fill in the blank. And they knew it. Okay? They weren't serious about negotiating. And so the negotiations fall apart, and we get these headlines the next day. We got this is yesterday morning's headlines from several different ones about the blockade and whatnot from Wall Street Journal and whatnot, and the fact that the Iranians are preparing for us to invade with ground troops. From what I've read, that's not beyond the realm of possibility at all. That we are accumulating, so to speak. We are gathering our troops in a position that could happen. Will it happen? Oh, if I knew that, I'd charge more for sponsorship. You know what I'm saying? You know? Anyway, but as far as this blockade, what it really is, it's not so much that we're escorting ships back and forth through the strait, even though we're doing a little of that. Mostly it's a blockade of their ports, very similar to what we did to Cuba. It's like a quarantine, as John Kennedy called it. So we're blockading their ports, and so ships aren't coming in and out, so they can't get oil in and out. And as far as like the Iranian Navy, it pretty much doesn't exist anymore, but they still have naval power through those Revolutionary Guard. What a lot of people don't understand about the Iranian military is almost like a two-tiered system. They have the traditional military of Air Force and Navy, and then they have the Revolutionary Guard, which has its own armed forces, and they act independently of the Iranian military. They're not subject to the control of the Iranian military. The control lies with the Ayatollahs solely. So it's like you have these competing military forces, you know. And so this is who's causing all the trouble. In the Iranian Navy, it's the Revolutionary Guard, and they don't have big destroyer ships easily targeted. They have a bunch of these small speedboats that are loaded with suicide bomb runs. Also, they have mined that strait. I think I have a headline about that. This one gave me grim humor. Here in the New York Times, Iran unable to find mines it planted in the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. says, so we can't even find them. They don't even know where they are. But here, the thing about this blockade is this. It's not so much that we're escorting the ships back and forth, even though that's going to happen more. It's going to be we're not letting ships leave Iran. And it doesn't matter what nationality of the ship, so to speak. I mean, if they're headed to China, they're heading to Russia, they're not leaving, according to this blockade. Now, let's see how long it lasts, because Trump, has a man crush on Putin. So maybe if Vlad calls Donnie, he'll say, please drop your blockade, and there you go. Is that possible? Yeah, you're just grinning over there. You have no comment look on your face.
Mm-hmm. Too early to say. I'm not gonna put. What is it? I'm not gonna count all my eggs before they hatch here.
Yeah, something like that. Now, I get why people are concerned about all of this. I mean, no one that has any real thoughts on the matter, if they're 100% for this without considering all the ramifications of it, they're not thinking about the situation. But I think if they're 100% against it, they should understand that, in my view anyway, this was inevitable. I don't like the way we went about it. I don't like the way that the Congress was left out totally. I am a constitutionalist. All right? I do think that Iran poses a very serious threat to not just the United States, but even more serious threat to its neighbors, not just Israel, but all the Arab neighbors. Because we don't. It really drives me crazy when I hear people talk about it. They think that they all come from that region of the world. They all have more or less the same mindset, and that's totally false. The Iranians are a outlier in that region, and by a lot, because of their Shia affiliation. The rest are Sunni, and you think the Americans and the Iranians have a bad relationship. The Shia and Sunni have an even worse one and a half for a millennium and a half. And so, if they give Iran a choice between destroying Saudi Arabia or Israel, it's 50-50. Okay, they'd have to talk about it. And so when we're having these bombing runs, another poster on my page said, in effect, and she wouldn't be accusatory or aggressive, but she says, does it not bother you that the civilians are getting killed by these bombing runs? Well, of course it does. But also, I would also point out that a lot of this is damage because of what they call, quote, collateral damage, which sounds pretty callous. A lot of it is done because the Iranian government forces people to be human shields. Okay? I'll get your question in a minute, Irma Vidic Crisp 10. That's interesting. So when you talk about people being killed, civilians being killed, a lot of them have been put there as targets by, or human shields. The Iranians, they're bombing Bhutan, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, the UAE, Dubai. They're just bombing, and they're bombing civilian areas. They're targeting civilians. Tel Aviv, there's no military assets in Tel Aviv, but they're targeting Tel Aviv. They almost hit the holy city of Jerusalem. Now, Irma's question is, what do you think is a realistic outcome here if both parties have non-negotiables that are contradictory to each other? I would say the most realistic outcome here, I wish I knew the real answer, but the most realistic outcome here is the Iranian government will commit suicide before they surrender. But this is not going to happen tomorrow or next week, and there's going to have to be more and more damage going on, and this war will go on into summer, and more and more people will be killed. But the Iranian government will not surrender because they feel like their death is a reward. See, the thing is, us old guys can remember the Soviet Union. And there were times that we bumped up against each other and everybody got their chili hot about a nuclear war, which I never worried about it. Why? Because I knew the Russians were realistic. They knew that, they could really cause us a lot of damage, but we could cause a lot of damage to them too. And so this mutually assured destruction routine that, we were dealing with, maybe not people that we saw eye to eye with, but they were in their way rational actors. These aren't rational actors. The next question, how different is this realistic outcome to what reality was prior to this war? The thing about it is, okay, it's a good question. Had the Iranians continued to go towards this nuclear bomb, had they continued to sponsor terrorism all over the region and sleeper cells in Europe, and God knows probably here in the United States, that would have continued. And if they ever got a nuclear bomb, I'm not worried about them launching it. I'm worried about them smuggling it in and bring it into the middle of Times Square or Piccadilly Square or by the Eiffel Tower and detonate it there. And as porous as everybody's borders are, I could see that happening. Trump isn't the only president that said this. We cannot have Iran with a nuclear power. There's no constraining factor on them. Say, well, North Korea has one. Well, China's never going to let them use it. But Iran has said from the very get-go, death to Israel, death to America. And they would not look upon destroying New York City. They wouldn't think twice about it if they had the capability to do it. Because you'd say, well, wouldn't they ensure their own destruction? To them, they're going to go to their version of heaven as martyrs. When you deal with a martyr mentality, you're not dealing with a rational actor. So back to the question, how different is this realistic outcome to the reality was prior to the war? The reality was we could have sanctioned them, we could talk about them, bellyache them, we could have, bomb their nuclear facilities, but they would continue at the price of their own people, continue to push towards a nuclear weaponry. And people that say, I hate war and all this, well, only a psychopath loves war. All right? And the thing about it, so why don't we negotiate? Let's put up that slide about what they've said themselves about negotiating. Okay? These comments are from Iran itself, and if you can see them on there. For example, about 20 years ago, the president at that time boasted that he had duped European negotiators while converting yellow cake into uranium hexafluoride at Iran's uranium conversion facility at Isfahan, which is one of the sites we bombed this summer. All right, so he said, yeah, they're boasting that they lied to the European negotiators. Yeah, we're not doing nuclear weapons. And then he said, and later he brags about how he duped them. Also, 2012, one of their nuclear leaders in this program, one of their scientists, we presented false information sometimes in order to protect our nuclear position and our achievements, as there is no other choice but to mislead foreign intelligence. So they are misleading foreign intelligence on purpose. Okay? And we bought it. Okay? And so did the Europeans. Partly because we wanted to buy it, I think, but therefore they hear their own leaders in their own program says we're misleading the America or the world. And then we had in 2015, late 2015, the creation of that joint agreement with Iran. And they were supposed to dismantle their nuclear uranium enrichment program and their cyclotrons and all this. I don't want to get too scientific because I don't know what I'm talking about. But here, John Kerry, who has got to be the most obtuse Secretary of State we've had, and that says a lot. He says he was in a hearing. He said, quote, just yesterday, which this is in January 16, just yesterday, the foreign minister of Iran reported to me that the Calandria core of the plutonium nuclear reactor is now out and is in the next hours. It will be filled with concrete and destroyed. Well, and what was our evidence? It was a crudely photoshopped picture that even the Obama administration said this isn't true. And then 3 years later, Ali Akbar Salehi, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization chief, said in a television interview that the Calandria core was not filled with cement. So they lied to Obama. And also, kind of a side note, during this whole negotiation process with Obama, they kidnapped about 14 of our sailors that were cruising through the Strait of Hormuz, and we had to pay them ransom, $4 billion in currency, $100 bills. Where did that money go? It didn't go to the people. Okay? All right. Trump's negotiator, Steve Witkoff, which I have no idea what gives him any kind of credibility because he was a real estate guy before he was doing this, basically said he was getting duped about a year ago. Said, I'm getting duped by these people. They're not serious. And then, late February, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi pledged during a TV appearance, this is the guy you see on Face the Nation or Meet the Press or whatever, we have limited the range of our missiles below 2,000 kilometers intentionally. Then a few weeks later, Iran fired a ballistic missile nearly 4,000 kilometers. So they get on television and said, we don't have any of these ballistic missiles that go over 2,000, which is the range of Israel, right? So they'll say, well, we have enough to hit them, but we don't have anybody else. And then they almost hit Diego Garcia out in the middle of the Indian Ocean with a ballistic missile that's twice as far as what they claimed. Now, if you think I'm justifying all this, I'm saying that this is what we're dealing with. If you don't like this war, I get it. I don't like it either. I don't like the way it started. I don't like the way Trump goes back and forth, back and forth. I don't like the way he makes it all about him. I don't like the fact that that we don't seem to have a real plan, that we thought, we'd just blow them up for about 10 days and then the Iranians would wave the white flag and give up their nuclear program. I don't think Trump had any idea who he was dealing with. And, and so that's one of my biggest problems. Now, Josh, you've been really quiet. I don't want to drag you into this if you don't want to, but do you have any thoughts on the matter?
I'm kind of following you here. I really don't like what's going on.
Yeah, but you see kind of why we're in this position after knowing the history behind it? What am I doing? Historical narrative behind it?
Yes, I can agree that.
It's hard, right?
Yeah.
No, it's really difficult.
I can agree that Iran is a threat.
Oh, and they have been.
They have been, but
I
don't think that.
Go ahead.
I don't think the existence of a threat justifies a preemptive strike.
Well, it depends on how close they are to getting to that goal. And the thing is, I think they were pretty close. And, it says a preemptive strike, when does a threat become a threat? Are we going to wait until they actually blow up something before we acknowledge that they're a threat?
That is a good point.
And plus we're going to have, when you have a country that every Friday their prayers are ended with the chant, death to Israel, death to America, and they now have a nuclear capability, I think we could take the Iranians' word for it, that they mean business, because they always have. And they are the cause of so much trouble in this world, with not just themselves, but the support of the Houthis in Yemen, the Hezbollah, the Hamas, the militia groups in Syria and Iraq. A lot of Americans were killed in Iraq by Iranian militia groups or Shia groups backed by Iran. And this idea that we, can't be involved in the world, that was the attitude we had in the 1930s. That's their problem. Well, now we're dealing with technology that can destroy us if we don't pay attention to these things. Now, this is kind of as far as I can go on this topic today. I want to address a couple other things. All I could say is, I understand why people are concerned about this war because of the way it's been conducted and the fact that it's lasted longer than was promised and that we don't seem to have a real strategy or plan. But on the other hand, had we followed Obama's plan, basically trying to bribe them, they're not bribable. They're not bribable. That money that we gave them to end their program supposedly in 2015 didn't go to the Iranian people. It went to the Iranian leadership, and that's why they bought more property. Some of the biggest property owners in London are members of the Iranian regime. That mentioned before, Mujtaba Khamenei, he's worth several $1 billion. That's where the money's going. So buying him off isn't going to work. Taking the word for it isn't going to work. That the Obama plan basically was going to take their word for it, that they were going to dismantle the programs, and they ended up sending us some ludicrous photographs. See, here it is, and no one believed it, except John Kerry probably. So the point is, we're at a point where if we continue to try to negotiate and deal with these people, sooner or later, the negotiation will change dramatically if they come to a nuclear weapon. Now, back in June, they said we destroyed their capability of creating a weapon, but not in perpetuity. And they're still going for it now. And so I don't know how that bombing in June, which I was supportive of, may have delayed things a while. But I feel bad in a sense because it'd be nice to be able to come out full throat against the war, but that's not the way it works. I mean, you got to look at the whole picture, and we're dealing with an enemy that wants our destruction and has said so point blank, without any kind of innuendo for nearly the half century. So what are we going to say?
Yeah.
So
I do have a question though.
Sure.
If from what you said, bribing them was never going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Bombing them hasn't worked. How exactly is a blockade expected to benefit this situation?
The only thing that's keeping the Iranian economy even somewhat funded is oil sales to China. And this is supposedly going to block that off. And so they don't have any other revenue. Eventually, they're going to run out of weapons and the ability to create them. So the blockade can work. How diligent it'll be maintained, what it means, how is it being conducted, that's all still to be seen, because this has only been, blockade started about 5 hours ago, I think. The blockade can work. And as far as bombing them, it has greatly reduced their ability to strike back. The Iranian weapon arsenal is much, much reduced. Their leadership is in total disarray. So it has worked in that sense, but it hasn't worked in the sense like there's been an end to the war. But you know who I often compare the Iranians with are the Nazis of Germany, fanatics. You know, they had to have their whole community bombed to the ground before they finally gave it up. And you still had fanatical Nazis even in Germany after the war, and these little guerrilla groups that the U.S. Army had to go and root out. You know, these werewolf groups, they called them. But you know, the Nazis weren't rational actors, and neither are the Iranians. And so I think that's the key to understand the whole thing, is that we're not dealing with somebody who has their own self-preservation at the top of their priority list. If they get killed, it's for a great cause, and Allah waits for them in heaven with 70 virgins and all this other stuff. There's 72, I don't know how many there are, but it's a bunch. And there you go. So when you deal with somebody whose self-preservation doesn't mean anything to them, it's going to go on. And the fact that they have no concern whatsoever about the hardship being placed upon their own people makes it even worse. You know, they don't care about what the Iranian people are going through. They never have. They don't respond to public pressure. Now, they go through elections, and they've had different types of presidents, and they have a parliament and all this other stuff, but it really is just all pantomime, because the leadership was in that group of that council is led by the Ayatollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. That's the power. The rest of it is just, I don't know, sideshow. It's kind of like the Reichstag was when Hitler was in power. It really didn't matter what kind of elections you had. They had elections in Nazi Germany. You could choose the Nazi of your choice, and that's about it. They had elections in the Soviet Union, supposedly, but, you know, or in Poland and other places, but, you know, they were a charade. So there you go. Should I talk about the distasteful meme from this morning, or talk about the nonprofits first?
Let's end it on a good note.
Okay, let's
end with the nonprofits.
Okay, end with the nonprofit. Okay. I'm not going to show you that meme that was been posted all over Facebook this morning, because it was, here it is. Yes, I'm talking about it now, Irma. Are you going to touch on the Trump as Jesus picture he posted and the rest of the posts or not? Yes, I'm talking about that now. Be patient, dadgummit. All right. That meme that he posted, or was posted on his behalf, doesn't matter. He's still responsible, and he endorsed it, or endorses it by whatever. It wasn't just distasteful. It was blasphemous. Okay? That's all there is to it. All right. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, there's a meme going around, and you'll see it on social media. Even though it was deleted off True Social, it's all over Facebook and all other places. And it was in the Post and the Times. They didn't show the picture, but they mentioned it, where Trump is in red and white robes healing a man lying in bed, you know, a golden glow in his hands, one on the man's forehead. And he had all these other people looking up to Trump as Jesus, and this, you know, raptured awe on their face. And in the background, here comes the U.S. military and whatever else. But basically, Jesus was, Ernie said he definitely posted it. I believe he did too, but there's probably going to be some, if somebody did it, you know, I didn't really do that, but I think he did it. But anyway, but the idea of Trump as Jesus like he showed is blasphemous. And there is no other way to put it. There is no excuse for it. There's no way you can rationalize it. There is no way you could say, well, I like his policies, but Donald Trump is not a well man if he considers himself to be on par or considers himself to be as Jesus. You don't have to be a Christian to be highly offended by this. As a Christian, I am highly offended by this. And what really bugs me, I want Trump's people to call him out on this and say, this is too far. I don't want to hear about, well, he's better than the Democrats. I don't want to hear about, well, I like his tax policy or I support him in this war. There is no way to support this without either accepting the blasphemy or have so rationalized the actions of Donald Trump that that has taken priority in your thinking and in your moral structure, so to speak. Honestly, I don't know what he's thinking, because I would be petrified to have even that thought go through my head. I would think God would blast me into a pile of ashes for thinking that. But more or less to post it and put himself as a healer that Jesus Christ is, I don't even know what to say. And I'm mad that I come to expect this kind of behavior from Donald Trump, as hateful and blasphemous as it is. But I'm mad that his own people are just kind of are not saying to him, you went too far. Or that's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. Really, a previous post, he posted about how the Pope Leo the 14th, was, quote, weak on crime. I did not know the Pope was involved in crime fighting. All right? That he was soft on nuclear weapons and weak on crime. And is the Pope responsible for crime? I didn't know that. But I'm going to say this to the people that support Donald Trump. You cannot let this pass and say this is just Trump being Trump. This is, he's made comments, he's made, statements, he's made some pretty outrageous things, and people just say, this is too far. This is blasphemy. And if you could support Donald Trump and say, well, it's just a harmless meme, I got nothing. I mean, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know what words I could use to convince you that how terrible that meme was this morning. And as a Christian, not so much as an American, but more as a Christian, I rebuke him for what he just did. Like it says in the Bible, I rebuke him in the name of Jesus, what he just did. And that's all I got to say about that. Let's talk about the nonprofits, shall we? Now that I'm all stirred up.
I told you we're ending on a good note.
Okay. All right, let me collect my emotions there, because I really am mad. But
no, you should be. You should be.
Okay. Anyway, April 6th through 13th is the last day to help out the library, the Friends of the Library. They're trying to raise some money for these different types of book displays. That way they can, kids can actually see the books. I had the Next Step Women Center on Thursday, and Megan says she takes her kids all the time to the library, and she really is excited about this. So you're trying to find these browsing bins or pay for these browsing bins. So go by, help donate for the library. They do so much, particularly in the summertime. Boy, they are very busy. So help out with that. And we also have coming up State of the City. If you still want to join that, you buy the tickets on the website at Chamber of Commerce. The State of the City is going to be on April 16th. It's going to be at First Burleson, which is my church, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. They're going to hear from the mayor, going to hear from Dan McClendon, our pro tem. We're going to have grub there provided by Texas Bar and Brewery. We're also going to have, it's sponsored by all these various groups, Frost Bank, Sierra Bank, a lot of banks like this, the National Bank of Texas, Proof, the new liquor store, which I think Josh is a regular customer, right?
That was supposed to be a secret.
Oh, okay, fine. And Ally Medical. I've been in Proof, actually. It's very nice.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
I need to check it out.
It's nice. It's, one of the concerns about having bars in Burleson when they passed that was going to have these dingy old bars with, or
Like
dingy
dive bars.
Yeah, or dingy liquor stores with, iron on the windows and all this. No, it's not like that at all. No, it's not like that at all. It's very nice. And I talked to the people a little bit, and they're, very nice people. Also, big deal, Walk for Life. There's a QR code to sign up. There's no charge to sign up, but they like you to sponsor and donate. Also, they have the Vineyard Vibes. Go back to the Walk for Life just for a moment. I kind of skipped through that. This is going to be at Bailey Park and this Saturday, 9 o'clock, and it'll last until it's over, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it's a big deal. This is one of their 2 big fundraisers, and they do so much. They were on the show last Thursday, and they had their annual report, and it's very, very impressive. So this is a group we need to pull behind, definitely. All of them, actually. I'm sure that all the groups could say that, and all the groups would be worthy of our support. I'm very fortunate to be able to help them out in even this very small way. Now you can go to the next one. Okay, Vineyard Vibes, a week from Sunday, the 26th, over at Lost Oak, 3 to 7. Tickets are $25. It's their big fundraiser. They're going to have the 7-6 band with Mike Perdue, which is always a good time because they really are good. They've been on the show before playing, and they're very, very impressive. So Vineyard Vibes, www.vineyardvibesbtx.com. All right, so check that out. And we have the Honey Tour coming up. Honey Tour, May 23rd on Saturday. If you want to be involved in that, there's a QR code. The ladies over at the Chamber of Commerce, Melissa and Candace, could definitely use some help. But they do have a company that's helping it together. But they always could use volunteers, and it's a big deal. And it's also coinciding with that big carnival, which I think this is one of the best weekends of the year. I really do. It's lots going on, and it's it's a good thing for the community. Absolutely. I think that's about it. I know there's the ASD crew is going to have a golf tournament in September, and I think the Chamber has one on the 13th. As far as the rest of the shows this week, I was going to put one on tomorrow with the guest, but the guest had to cancel last night, so I don't have one. I'm going to have the show Thursday if I can. If there's some things going on, I don't like to talk about what's going on with my mom's health too much because it's private family thing, but tomorrow I have to be somewhere else. And if that is the same thing on Thursday, then we'll run the Next Step rerun. But we'll hopefully Thursday we'll have the guest I wanted to have will be able to make it work this time. He's very busy. How do you feel now, Josh? You feel enlightened?
Enlightened, yeah.
I'm very upset about that meme. I really am.
You should be. I mean, a lot of people are.
I really am that our President of the United States would do that. And that, if it were just some knucklehead Yahoo on Facebook, well, I would have thought, this guy's, what's the matter with him? But this is the President of the United States doing this, comparing himself to Jesus. And meaning it. This wasn't a joke.
No.
It wasn't a troll job. Who's he trolling? Us? His supporters, supposedly? Christian people? I got no words for it. And as far as the war, I know my stance may not be very popular. A lot of my former students are very much opposed to it, and I understand that. I think it's an unfortunate situation that had been coming for a long time, and we had to have this happen one way or the other, and waiting on them to change wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to fall apart like the Soviet Union did. So so I can't really, say that this is something that we should have avoided because it was coming our direction whether we wanted to or not. But here we go. Thank you, Irma, for joining the show today and giving us your insights, so to speak. Yeah, I guess she's watching on YouTube because normally she does it on Facebook, but whatever. Like I said, tomorrow I'll be out of pocket. I'll be in Corsicana. Thursday we'll see. Next week, let's see who we got. I know we got something scheduled for next week. I'm going to just check the schedule here. I got Colin Gregory next Monday. That always is a good show. And then I have Wings of Hope on the 21st. That's always a good show too. So, and then the 27th, 2 weeks from today, we have Brandon Crisp. And Irma has promised she's going to come on the show and sing us her favorite Taylor Swift songs. You think she's going to do that? No, Brandon's going to talk about a book he's written, and it's going to talk about his publishing career. All right. Thank you all for listening, for letting me vent my spleen. I hope share this with people. If you have comments, you know where to put them. I don't mean that in a crude way. I meant on Facebook. That sounded terrible, didn't it? That's not what I meant, but put them on Facebook, not, where the sun don't shine or anything like that. This caffeine. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.